Speaking of medicine, let's bring on board the recent reports on the physician and his medical staff privileges. This will be relayed here by Attorney Kenneth Haber of Boyd's, Maryland. Our regular moderator is Attorney Ramesh Khurana from the Khurana Law Firm. Let's take a look.
This is Ramesh Khurana, attorney at law. I have my office in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and it's my great pleasure introducing you today Mr. Kenneth Haber, who is a very seasoned and experienced attorney having his office in Boyd's, Maryland, but his practice is nationwide. I know that he is representing certain physicians in several states in the United States, and he is the former Assistant U.S. Attorney and the former Senior Attorney in the Office of Inspector General. Ken, welcome to our studio.
Thank you, Ramesh.
Ken, I remember in our last segment I had asked you some questions about the medical staff privileges and you were kind to answer them competently. I really enjoyed that conversation. So continuing with the same conversation, because medical staff privileges are very close to the hearts of physicians, because as you told us last time, if their names are data banked, now that's the bad day for any physician.
Absolutely.
And so continuing with the same topic, my question to you is that of course you explained to us that medical staff privilege, how these work and what are the responsibilities for a physician in terms of the document which would govern the relationship of a physician with the medical facility. Now, can you please summarize what medical staff privileges are and why they may be so significant?
Yes, medical staff privileges are the authorization from a facility, a healthcare entity, where doctors practice, and it authorizes those doctors to practice at that location, at that facility, in certain areas. So, a doctor might be given privileges to practice internal medicine. He may be given privileges to practice surgery, but if it's going to be surgery, it's normally going to delineate whether it's general surgery or whether it's neurosurgery. And a general surgeon shouldn't be doing neurosurgery because they don't believe that those are equivalent. So they're going to specifically define the practice areas of the various doctors that are working at those facilities. That's what privileges
So
do.
based on the information available, the hospital will decide the competence areas of that particular physician.
Absolutely.
And they expect that physician to work within those predefined areas.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it. Now, let me ask you one more related questions. So what are some of the options that are to be considered by physician's attorney if he believes that his clients, doctors' privileges are at risk?
He has to do the best he can to determine if there's an investigation going on. And it doesn't take a formal investigation. And that's a big complication because at large hospitals, they normally routinely do quality assurance, and they review cases of the various patients and the doctors, so they have to make a determination if there's anything going on that would be considered an investigation, and that's not all that well defined in the law. And
so that's under the compliance program.
Well, that's in term. You mean as far as the regular hospital quality assurance?
Right.
Yeah, they normally will take a certain number of cases randomly, and if they're doing it right, they will do it without the reviewers knowing who the physician is. Now, if it's at that stage that something's going on, or no one knows who the physician that's being reviewed and it's a random thing, there's a good argument that the physician was not under investigation. It was just a general random quality assurance.
Moreover, they want to stay away from the charges of negligence against them.
Right, the hospitals.
Yeah.
But if the physician, his cases were specifically being reviewed because of some reason, like somebody made a complaint against him, that would be more akin to him being under investigation, even if there had not been a formal investigation authorized by the medical board. And if that were the case, and if he was going to be resigning then he would be facing the situation where his resignation could be reported to the data bank.
Okay. Now tell us, Ken, what are some of the factors that an attorney who is representing this physician should consider when making recommendations to his doctor client when the attorney thinks that doctor's privileges are really at great risk?
Well, the first thing is to try to ascertain whether or not he's being investigated. He's got to ascertain, he has to ascertain what are the economic factors going on. You know, is a powerful group, you know, seeking to exclude him from practice there. And they have to ascertain, is there some way of remedying that hostility? Maybe the doctor joining the group, if that's the doctor's willing to do, or if he's not under investigation yet, you know, is there some other hospital that he can go practice at that wants him? You know, and then they have to decide, how does he exit? You know, he wants to exit where it's clear, you know, if at all possible, in writing that he's not under any sort of investigation, so that later on the hospital doesn't claim that he is or was, especially if he's going to a different hospital, competing with the first hospital. You know, they might want to dream up something to data bank him. So, I mean, there's all sorts of economic and legal issues going on in order to try how to best, you know, advise your client what to do.
So, let us say that investigation has started against a doctor. This is what the attorney knows, and doctor has to go for a hearing. Now, tell us, what are some of the important strategies which are to be used by the attorney in the defense of his doctor client?
Well, you've got to assume that you're going to be losing the hearing, that the deck's stacked against you. That's the assumption you want to work from, the worst case scenario. You want to create a record, not only that your client wasn't doing anything wrong, but you want to create a record that the hospital is not complying with the requirements of their own bylaws or the Healthcare Quality Improvement Act.
Why are you laying emphasis on the importance of record? Because if the doctor has to file an appeal, this is always based on the record or for some other reason?
Based on the record. And if you can show that they're not following appropriate procedures, you know, you have a better chance of getting a court to overrule a hospital's decision. If they complied with all the procedures, doctors are very, very reluctant to replace their judgment with the medical expertise of an institution. You can get other experts going against them, and maybe you can get such renowned experts that maybe the judge will, but the best thing to do is find where the hospital is not following procedures. By not following proper procedures, they also eliminate immunity from themselves in many situations. And, you know, what you want to do is trip them up on procedures if possible.
Okay. Now, I know that a physician in this kind of situation, when he just stuck, may have numerous legal recourses. Now, can you please explain some of the important legal recourses which are available to a physician in this kind of situation?
Certainly. If you're talking about, you know, people using the hospital mechanisms in an economic situation, you have the possibility of antitrust violations. If the hospital happens to be a public institution, you have possibly civil rights violations, you know, because of the fact that the hospital has to go by due process and things like that. Minor little things within the lexicon of our legal system. So, you know, what you're trying to do is find what legal tool that you have that will be operative for that particular situation, that particular institution. Sometimes, you know, you're finding that the hospital is in fact operating hand in glove with a group that's within the hospital, and they understand that the group is driving the physician out of the hospital at the same time, and they're willing to do that because it's a powerful group. But at the same time, they don't want that physician going to competitors necessarily, so they want to make sure that that physician, if he is being driven out, he's going to be so tainted no one else is going to want him. So consequently, the hospital's going to want to be able to have any sort of basis to blackball him in the data bank. And when you get the doctor blackballed in the data bank, what the doctor's going to find is that the various institutions around, if there are other institutions, aren't going to want to touch him because of the fact that they're all concerned about getting sued for malpractice in credentialing. So if anything happens with that doctor at their institution and they've approved him when he's been blackballed already once, then what's a good malpractice attorney going to do? But they're going to turn around and they're going to sue the hospital for the concept of negligent credentialing. And cases do prove out that way, and hospitals end up with judgments where they haven't done anything except putting the person on staff. But here they're giving that physician the tools to be practicing medicine on the patients of the hospital, be it the doctor's own patient to begin with, or be it a patient that's needs the doctor's expertise, such as a surgeon. So if that surgeon's been data banked before, the big question as far as the malpractice attorney is, why is this hospital taking this doctor on that's already been tainted and blackballed already? And this shows that the hospital is not following proper procedures in terms of keeping out physicians who are incompetent. And they will build up a case using that in order to justify the suit against the hospital. The hospital itself might have done nothing wrong by taking on this physician who could be a fine physician with excellent credentials, and they might not even believe what's in the data bank. But now they're going to have to fight against that. They might know this doctor is a good doctor. He can have excellent credentials, except for what's in the data bank. But the hospital doesn't want to have to fight against the data bank record. They're not really fighting against the data bank, but the record in the data bank. And unfortunately, the data bank accepts just about any trash that's sent to them from a reporting entity. And it's most unfortunate for physicians that that's the system that's developed. There needs to be a gatekeeper at the data bank, and there is no real gatekeeper at the data bank. So the physicians have to be very careful as far as giving anybody any ammunition as far as criticizing them and having something to file against them with the data bank. And on top of that, you got to remember that not only is the data bank going to be informed of what happened, but it's also the licensing board that's going to be informed, and the doctor is going to have to go and relive the whole process. And not only are they going to have to relive the whole process with the licensing board, but any place else they want to get privileges in some other state or something, they're going to have to relive the whole process and establish their credibility, because those other institutions are going to be just as reluctant as the facility that's nearby to take that doctor on, because they don't want to get sued either. So that's why it can be a career stopper for physicians that they get data banked.
We are now left with less than 1 minute. Can just let me know if a doctor believes there is a civil justice violation, what can he do?
If he thinks that there's a civil rights violation, he can hire an attorney who has some familiarity with the area. And what you got to understand, every case is different.
Right.
Every case is different.
Yeah.
So it's got to be researched. It's got to be researched for the law of the jurisdiction.
Okay.
And what they have to try to do is to establish that
So
that a violation
we are
of
left
civil
with
rights.
10 seconds
10
more.
seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds, but they have to establish that the
I think you
hospital
have very much
violated their
covered.
civil rights.
You have very much covered. Thank you very much. Appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, viewers, for being with us.